Moroha was getting ready to fight a giant dragon. He launched a magical attack, but the dragon breathed fire back at him. Moroha quickly blocked the flames with his magic shield. The Sword of Salvation unit prepared to back him up, while Moroha began casting his spell. The dragon kept firing waves of flames. Some of the team focused on reinforcing the shield spell to withstand the attack. Edward moved into position to strike the dragon's left wing. Just then, the dragon swung its tail toward him, but Angela reacted in time and blocked the tail with her sword. Sophia delivered a powerful blow that knocked the dragon back. Other members followed with a mix of magic blasts and physical attacks. Shizuno cast a freezing shade spell onto Satsuki's sword. Satsuki then swung her sword toward the dragon, freezing it solid. The massive creature crashed to the ground, but moments later the ice around it shattered and the dragon roared back to life. By that time, Moroha had completed his high-level dark magic spell, the 8th tier Thunderstorm Helix. He was truly grateful to all his friends who held off the dragon while he prepared the spell. As the dragon charged again, Moroha unleashed the spell and struck it with his blade, creating a massive explosion. Even in moments that feel hopeless, when death seems inevitable, there's always a glimmer of hope like a speck of gold hidden in a pile of gray rubble. 6 months earlier was the first day of school at the private Akane Academy. The students at Akane were special individuals chosen because they carried memories from past lives and could use inherited ancestral magic. On that day, the opening ceremony for new students was held. The principal, Mary, gave a welcome speech and expressed her hope that the students would grow into heroes capable of defeating metaphysical threats. Moroha was one of the students attending the ceremony, though he ended up sleeping through most of it. While dozing off, he had a dream of a past life where he saved a girl. In the dream, the girl leaned in as if she was about to kiss him, but Moroha suddenly woke up, only to find someone standing right in front of him, who then knocked their forehead into his punishment. Startled and in pain, Moroha realized it was a girl named Satsuki. She scolded him for sleeping during the ceremony. What shocked Moroha even more was how much Satsuki looked like the girl from his dream, Sarasha, and he accidentally called her by that name. With tears in her eyes, Satsuki called him Flaga and suddenly jumped into his arms, saying she had missed him terribly. Moroha tried to explain that he was not Flaga, but just Moroha. Still, Satsuki insisted that he was her older brother from a past life because she had heard him say Sarasha's name earlier. Moroha admitted that he could barely remember anything from his past life, and the name Sarasha just popped into his head out of nowhere. As they talked, they noticed a girl had collapsed nearby. Moroha rushed to check on her. Satsuki assumed the girl might be anemic or something similar, but when Moroha got closer, the girl suddenly opened her eyes, called him Shusora, and kissed him out of the blue. Shocked, Satsuki quickly separated them. She angrily accused Moroha of kissing a random girl. Moroha explained that the girl had kissed him, not the other way around. The girl closed her eyes again, but Satsuki snapped at her, calling her a sneaky cat. She was upset that the girl had kissed Moroha and claimed she had mistaken him for someone else. Satsuki was baffled by how someone could kiss a stranger like that. Feeling irritated, she saw the girl as someone who had stolen her spotlight. Moroha tried to calm the situation, but the girl casually asked what it felt like to kiss her. She did not seem bothered at all by what had happened. Moroha then criticized her for treating something so personal so carelessly. Satsuki was frustrated watching them talk so casually in front of her, especially since Moroha didn't seem to care about her and didn't even remember who she was. Upset, Satsuki yelled at him and ran away, leaving the two behind. On the first day of class, Mr. Taro asked the students to start introducing themselves. Suddenly, Satsuki raised her hand and introduced herself first. She says she was determined to become the second strongest savior at the school and even asked the others to follow her lead. The whole class fell silent, confused by Satsuki's behavior. They didn't even know her, so they couldn't understand why they were supposed to follow her. Satsuki explained that she was just trying to set an example because everyone looked as calm as a bunch of cats. Moroha was baffled by her attitude and asked Mr. Taro to just continue the introductions since their time was limited. Mr. Taro agreed and encouraged everyone to get to know each other quickly. As he began calling names from the attendance list, Satsuki looked at Moroha and playfully stuck out her tongue. The first name called was Shizuno, but she was fast asleep at her desk. After that, the students went to change clothes for training. Shizuno quietly promised herself that she would beat everyone during practice so that Moroha would compliment her. Satsuki confidently stated that no one could possibly oppose the love between her and Moroha. The other students looked puzzled by her bold declaration. On their way to the training grounds, Satsuki suddenly called out to Moroha and ran up to him. She boldly invited him to go on a date after school, then linked her arm with his and leaned in close. Moroha looked awkward and told her he was actually planning to look for a part-time job. Satsuki reminded him that the school didn't allow students to work while enrolled. Soon, they passed by a separate room that looked like a coliseum. Shizuno explained that if someone got injured inside, their injuries would be healed as soon as they left the space. Once they arrived at the training area, Mr. Taro began explaining that there were two types of saviors, the Sharingan, who use light-based skills, and dark arts users, who draw power from darker sources. That day, Mr. Taro planned to teach them how to use light skills. With a specific movement, his body suddenly lit up, amazing all the students. He explained that the glow came from something called Plana, the source of light-based skills. One student asked how to activate that power and said they were eager to try. Mr. Taro told them that everyone carried memories from their past lives, so they should be able to use Plana by instinct. The students gave it a try, but no one succeeded at first. Then, out of nowhere, Satsuki showed off her ability to use Plana. Everyone was shocked to see the energy radiating from both of her hands. She even lifted another student with one arm and spun them around. Satsuki was thrilled to finally show what she could do. Moroha was about to try using Plana too, but decided to hold back. Satsuki walked up to him and asked if he had seen her power just now. Suddenly, a student named Jen started complaining. He said the class felt pointless and wished a rampaging metaphysical being would show up at the training grounds. His friends asked why he would want something like that, and Jen said if the threat level were high enough, even first-year students like them might be allowed to fight. He and his two friends burst out laughing. Satsuki walked over to them and called them a disgrace as saviors. She told Jen to think carefully about what he had just said. Jen mocked her, calling her a hero of justice. Satsuki snapped back, saying he smelled bad and should toss his brain into the garbage incinerator. Jen, clearly upset, suddenly activated his Plana, and the other students were amazed to see him channeling it throughout his entire body. Mr. Taro, their teacher, tried to stop the fight between the two, but Jen instead suggested having a sparring match with Satsuki. Mr. Taro objected, saying it was inappropriate to have a practice duel on the very first day of school. Unexpectedly, Satsuki agreed to Jen's proposal, which left the teacher with no choice but to allow it. The sparring session began. Jen took off his necklace and summoned a massive axe as his weapon. Satsuki responded by drawing her sword Arceal. Morova didn't understand how they could summon weapons like that. Shizuno explained that by channeling their planet into themselves, they could manifest weapons they used in their past lives. The fight between Satsuki and Jen began. Moroha was worried whether Satsuki would be alright. She kept swinging her sword, attacking Jen, but his much larger build allowed him to block her attacks with ease. Jen kept mocking Satsuki's missed strikes. Frustrated, Satsuki aimed low and lunged with all her strength, but her attack missed again and her sword slipped from her hand. Gen told Satsuki to pick her weapon back up. He said that the match was supposed to set an example for the others, so they should start the attack again. Feeling frustrated, Satsuki quickly ran to retrieve her sword. Just then, Gen swung his giant axe and tore part of her uniform. Everyone was shocked, while Satsuki stood still looking down in embarrassment. Seeing this, Gen laughed loudly. Moroha quickly stepped forward and covered Satsuki's back with his jacket, surprising her. Gen called her useless for not being able to handle her Plana and went as far as calling Satsuki and Moroha a perfect pair of losers. Mr. Taro returned and scolded Jen. Although Jen had technically won, Mr. Taro reminded him that mocking others for being weaker was unacceptable. Still, Jen insisted that Satsuki was weak. Hearing that, Satsuki ran off and Jen continued laughing. Moroha chased after her. After school, Moroha invited Satsuki to grab something to eat at a cafe, but she still looked very down. Moroha admitted that he didn't really understand what it meant to be a savior, but he believed that having a genuine desire to become stronger was a good start. Satsuki shared that her hometown was constantly under attack by metaphysical beings, forcing her to move from place to place. Because of that, she never made many friends. Still, she never felt truly lonely since she had memories of Sarasha and often met Flaga in her dreams. After taking the school's test, she came to understand that she was a savior, and that she wasn't the only one with a past life. When she found out there was a school specifically for saviors, she thought there might be a chance she would meet Flaga again. Her second biggest wish was to fight for justice and protect the world. But her first wish was much more personal. She wanted to look cool in front of Moroha. She realized she had no right to criticize Jen because in truth she saw in him all the things she disliked about herself. That's what made her choose to attack him. Satsuki came to the painful realization that she felt pathetic. She quietly hoped that Moroha, as her older brother, would scold her like he used to. Suddenly, Shizuno appeared, offering to scold her instead. Satsuki was surprised and assumed Moroha had asked Shizuno to come, but he shook his head. Shizuno called Satsuki a sneaky thief who was secretly dating someone. Satsuki scolded Shizuno for eating all her snacks, but Shizuno thought Satsuki was feeling down and had lost her appetite, so she said she ate the snacks for her sake. Satsuki then explained that she and Moroha were siblings in a past life, so they had a lot to talk about. She asked Shizuno to step back, but instead, Shizuno hugged Moroha and pressed his face into her chest. Satsuki's face turned red and she asked what Shizuno was doing, but neither of them paid her any attention. Frustrated, Satsuki shouted and called them both indecent for acting inappropriately in public. She can question whether Moroha just really liked that part of a woman's body and blamed Shizuno for shamelessly using hers to get guys' attention. Calmly, Shizuno said Satsuki shouldn't be upset just because she didn't have much to show in that area. Satsuki, flustered, pressed her chest with both hands to prove that she did have something there. Shizuno apologized, admitting that she probably shouldn't have said something that harsh. Satsuki only felt worse and started to believe she was just pitiful. Trying to comfort her, Shizuno reminded her they were still in their growth years and kindly offered Moroha back to Satsuki. Blushing, Satsuki asked whether her chest felt pleasant too, but unexpectedly, Moroha said it felt stiff, like a wooden board. Satsuki burst into tears and ran away. Moroha thanked Shizuno, thinking she had come just to cheer Satsuki up. Shizuno denied it and walked off. That afternoon, Moroha met Gen at the training grounds. He asked Gen to apologize to Satsuki, but Gen said he would only do it if Moroha managed to land a hit on him. Gen pulled out his axe and charged at Moroha. Meanwhile, Satsuki was taking a bath, thinking about how kind Moroha had been, just like in their past life. Suddenly, Shizuno barged into her room and told her about what was happening with Moroha. Without even getting fully dressed, Satsuki rushed out to find him. At that moment, Moroha was struggling in his fight against Gen, who had just sent him flying with a powerful strike. Moroha admitted he couldn't follow Gen's movements in battle. Gen's two friends praised his incredible speed and referred to him as Jinsukatsu, someone whose movements were lightning fast. Moroha was overwhelmed. When Gen attacked from behind, Moroha barely managed to block the strike, but he was thrown back again. Satsuki arrived at the scene and called out to him. Seeing her, Gen said he would continue the fight with Satsuki instead and made an inappropriate remark about tearing her clothes. Hearing this, Moroha became furious and attacked Gen, but the strike only landed on Gen's axe. Gen swung his axe and instantly shattered the sword Moroha was using. But Moroha did not give up. He kept attacking Gen with his broken sword. Even after multiple strikes, he could not land a single hit. Every time he was thrown back again and again. Watching this, Satsuki felt heartbroken. She truly believed Moroha was going to lose. Shizuno explained that Moroha was fighting for Satsuki, so Satsuki needed to watch him until the very end. Moroha kept fighting until his sword was knocked far out of reach. As he tried to grab it, Gen stepped on his hand. In that moment, Moroha suddenly remembered a dream, where his younger sister from a past life encouraged him. She had called him the guardian of the Holy Sword. Unexpectedly, Satsuki spoke words that were nearly the same. In his previous life, Flyba had made a promise to always win and return to Sarasha. As Gen raised his axe preparing to strike, Satsuki shouted out a promise. She would kiss Moroha if he won. That moment triggered a sudden realization in Moroha. He remembered how to summon his weapon. He then called forth his sword named Saratiga and rushed toward Gen with determination. Just then, Mary, Taro, and Maya arrived on the scene to try to stop the fight. Gen was shocked. Moroha had just awakened his planning that he was already able to perform Jinsukatsu, technique Gen himself had only mastered after 2 years. Their weapons clashed, and in the end, Gen lost consciousness. Satsuki ran to Moroha and embraced him as his strength began to fade. Mary then mentioned the term Ancient Dragon, which referred to a spirit from the past or an ancestral soul born from the War of Death. Moroha was dreaming about Satsuki, who told him she believed he would keep his promise to win and come back to her, so she hoped he would not let her down. In that dream, she leaned in and kissed him. Her lips felt soft like a little girl's. Moroha opened his eyes and woke up to find a small girl sitting on top of him. She quickly got off and said his pain had disappeared. Moroha had no idea who the girl was. It turned out she was Maya, Mari's younger sister. Moroha realized Maya had just transferred mana through his lips to help restore his magical energy. He then understood that Maya was the one who had kissed him. Maya's face turned bright red with embarrassment. Suddenly, Satsuki's voice could be heard struggling against her restraints. Mary had intentionally tied her up and gagged her just to keep things quiet for a moment. Mary asked if Moroha was actually a legendary dragon. Some members of the Japanese branch of the White Knight Order referred to him as a spirit of a past hero. Moroha had no idea what she was talking about. Mary explained that his savior is someone who had lived a previous life. She had long suspected that some saviors might have memories from 2 past lives. Moroha was confused. He already remembered his life as a soldier, but Mary insisted there was a second one. She had seen it during Moroha's last battle. When he swung his sword, he used a level 3 dark arts technique. Luckily, he did not suffer any physical injuries from it. Mary told him to return to the dorm and get some rest. Maya warned him to be careful, especially when it came to dealing with girls, because bad luck seemed to follow him in those situations. Before leaving, Mary reminded him to take Satsuki with him. Once Satsuki was untied, she lit up and asked if Moroha had remembered everything. She leaned in, ready to kiss him. Just then, Shizuno appeared, surprising Satsuki. She was confused why Shizuno had shown up right when she and Moroha were having a moment about their promise. Her Her face turned beet red after blurting out something so embarrassing. To Satsuki's shock, Shizuno calmly kissed Moroha in front of her, clearly trying to make her jealous. Upset, Satsuki quickly tried to pull Moroha away from Shizuno. From a distance, Maya watched and quietly confirmed her earlier feeling. Trouble always followed Moroha when girls were involved. Later in class, Satsuki asked Moroha to exchange contact info. After getting his number, she was thrilled. It was the third contact on her phone right after her parents. Moroha congratulated her, but Satsuki got a little defensive and admitted she had always been a loner. Shizuno then asked to exchange contacts too, and Satsuki agreed. Suddenly Jin's older brother, walked into the classroom and called for both Moroha and Shizuno. The female students squealed with excitement at the sight of Jin. He took them up to the rooftop for a private talk. Jin explained that Moroha had now reached rank C. He had seen Moroha's match against his younger brother. Rank C students received compensation for scholarships, and after graduation, they would be guaranteed jobs within the White Knight Order. Jin told Moroha that now that he was rank C, he would be assigned as one of Jin's strikers, a team that fought against metaphysical threats. Assignments usually came once or twice a month. Since being a rank C came with responsibilities, Jin advised Moroha to think it over carefully. Moroha asked how much the scholarship and compensation would be. Jin whispered the amount, and Moroha's face lit up with excitement. He immediately said he was in. Jin also said Shizuno had already been accepted as a backup member. Just then Satsuki, who had been eavesdropping, ran over and asked to join too. If Moroha and Shizuno were going to be part of it, then she had to join as well. Jin said he understood how Satsuki felt, but he did not know anything about her combat abilities. Shizuno backed her up, saying Satsuki was strong enough to defeat Jin, but Jin said it was probably too soon for her to join rank C. Satsuki looked hurt. She turned away, said she would become stronger as fast as she could, and that one day she would stand right beside Moroha to support him. Tears filled her eyes as she ran off, leaving Moroha behind. That day, Moroha and Shizuno were officially promoted to rank C. The upperclassmen welcomed them warmly. Before training together, they had to recite a chant declaring themselves as saviors who fight for humanity, peace, and justice. After that, everyone trained together. Jin's generation was often referred to as the Golden Generation because many of them had already defeated Metaphysicals in Japan's branch, meaning they were stronger than most adults in the White Knight Academy. Some of them had even surpassed rank B. Moroha wasn't sure if he could keep up in a place like that, but Shizuno reassured him that he would be just fine. During a practice match, Moroha lost and admitted that he had never felt so exhausted in his life, but Shizuno pointed out that he didn't know when to stop. As Moroha and Shizuno were walking home together, they saw Satsuki waiting for them ahead. She had been waiting for quite a while. Satsuki told Moroha that she had found a great okonomiyaki place and invited him to go with her. But before Moroha could say anything, Shizuno politely suggested that Satsuki should go on her own since both she and Moroha were too tired and just wanted to go home and rest. Shizuno reminded Moroha that they would be training every day from now on, so it would be better for him to get some rest and prepare for the responsibilities ahead. Satsuki apologized, realizing she shouldn't have invited them out that late. Shizuno told her it wasn't her fault, that since they got home late every day, having Satsuki wait around would only make them feel guilty. Satsuki asked if she could invite them out again on a day off. Before Moroha could answer, she suddenly ran off. Moroha was confused as to why Shizuno had said that to her. According to Shizuno, she just didn't want Moroha to lose again in training. However, Moroha didn't like how Shizuno handled the situation. He'd thanked her for helping him, but admitted that it didn't sit well with him when someone went that far on his behalf. Before parting ways, Moroha asked Shizuno to make him happy by giving him a smile. Then, Moroha ran after Satsuki. She was crying the whole way, realizing that Shizuno was just telling the truth. Suddenly, Moroha called her and asked if she was crying. Satsuki denied it, saying she was just having a pollen allergy. Moroha knew she was lying and told her she looked awful when she cried. As it turned out, Moroha was standing right behind her. Satsuki, shocked and embarrassed, blushed deeply. They walked together for a while. Moroha said he would eat okonomiyaki or anything else during his day off, but he would prefer if Satsuki made it for him. Satsuki promised to make the best okonomiyaki ever, so good that Moroha would become addicted to it. Moroha then asked if he could keep calling Satsuki before going to sleep. Satsuki teased him, saying he was like an older brother who couldn't be apart from his little sister. Still, she said he could call her 2 or 3 times a week. On the morning of their day off, Satsuki called Shizuno to invite her out. They went to a shopping mall together. When they arrived, Shizuno asked what the occasion was for inviting her out to a place like that. Satsuki told her that she wanted help picking out a gift for Moroha to celebrate him reaching rank C. Satsuki explained that she invited Shizuno because she had no idea what kind of gift to give, and since she didn't have much money, she hoped they could choose and buy something together. Hearing that, Shizuno immediately walked away from Satsuki, but Satsuki kept begging her. Eventually, Shizuno gave in. They began searching for a gift for Moroha, but after wandering around the mall, they couldn't find anything suitable. They decided to take a break on a bench as Shizuno was feeling tired. Satsuki apologized for dragging her along, but Shizuno invited her to grab a snack to help ease the fatigue. Satsuki went to buy some ice cream, and while doing so, she happened to see two little kids sharing ice cream together. The sight reminded her of her childhood in a previous life. The weather looked gloomy that day, and suddenly, people started running in panic after spotting a metaphysical creature in the form of a snake. Chaos broke out as everyone ran to safety. Satsuki became worried about Shizuno. The snake's presence made the children cry in fear. Satsuki froze. She was terrified, but she thought that running away would mean failing as a little sister. So she quickly summoned her plana and weapon, then rushed forward to confront the snake-like metaphysical being. She asked Shizuno to take care of the frightened children. However, Shizuno didn't think Satsuki could handle the creature alone. Satsuki charged and leaped toward the snake, slashing her sword across its body. After landing back on the ground, she was shocked to see the creature's head still moving. Meanwhile, Shizuno began casting a freezing spell to stop the creature. The power of her magic visibly hurt the snake. Shizuno had already contacted the school in Moroha, and she also helped evacuate the civilians. Satsuki urged her to leave the area, saying it was too dangerous, but Shizuno confidently replied that she was a well-known mage around the world and could easily handle this. Satsuki arrogantly said she didn't need Shizuno's help. Then she ran into the shopping center, followed closely by the creature's head. From above, Shizuno launched magical attacks at the beast. Satsuki leaped onto the snake's body, slashed it, and prepared to decapitate it, only to be taken aback when multiple heads suddenly emerged. There weren't just 2 or 3, there were 9 serpent heads surrounding her. That's when Shizuno realized they were actually facing the leader of the Hydra. Satsuki began to feel overwhelmed, thinking she might not be able to defeat the Hydra on her own. She decided to retreat, but unexpectedly, the Hydra released a cursed attack. Without hesitation, Shizuno jumped in front of Satsuki to shield her, and the curse struck Shizuno's body. The petrification curse began to spread across her. With calm determination, Shizuno told Satsuki to amplify her plana to resist the curse. Satsuki tightened her grip on her sword, ready to face off against all 9 Hydra heads. One by one, they began to block her path. As she prepared to fight, she saw Shizuno slowly turning to stone. In desperation, Satsuki shouted Moroha's name. At that moment, Moroha was in a meeting with the Striker team. Jin explained that the metaphysical creature they were facing was a high-level threat, similar to the one that appeared during the Darko Bay incident. He also mentioned that he had never encountered a metaphysical being with 9 heads before. Moroha suggested they send reinforcements immediately, knowing Satsuki and Shizuno were at the scene. But Jin refused. He said they couldn't deploy help, not for this kind of opponent. If it were a regular metaphysical entity, they could have, but in this case, it would take 100 soldiers to bring it down. Jin asked Moroha to understand the situation. Hearing that, Moroha remembered his childhood, specifically, the time when his parents were undergoing surgery. He had pleaded with the doctors to use his own blood to save them, but the doctors told him he was too young to be a donor and asked him to understand the circumstances. That memory gave him the courage to speak up to Jin. With conviction, Moroha said that a human life has no replacement. He brushed aside Jin's hand and questioned how they could call themselves the Swords of Salvation if they couldn't save 2 girls in danger. At that moment, Satsuki was doing her best to keep Shizuno conscious. Suddenly, the Hydra's tongue lashed out, wrapped around Satsuki's body, and held her tightly. She screamed out Moroha's name, believing he would never praise her if he saw her like that. One of the Hydra's heads opened its mouth, ready to swallow Satsuki whole. She felt helpless, convinced that her life was about to end. Just then, Moroha appeared and swiftly sliced off the Hydra's head with his sword, Saratiga. He apologized for making Satsuki and Shizuno wait so long. Without wasting any time, he jumped onto the metaphysical creature, determined to cut down the rest of its heads. Unfortunately, the Hydra proved to be tough to defeat. Shizuno slowly opened her eyes and saw how hard Moroha was fighting. She told him to stay calm, confident that he would not lose. She reminded him that he still had one more power left, and she believed he could use it. At that moment, Moroha suddenly remembered something. He said he would never let anyone take someone precious from him. He then started writing down a spell that had just come to his mind, all while dodging the Hydra's relentless attacks. The spell was a 5th-level dark art known as Black Gehenna. Moroha unleashed the magical attack on the Hydra's body. A massive explosion followed, damaging the shopping center and destroying the metaphysical Hydra completely. The curse on Shizuno's body was also lifted. Not long after, Mari and Taro arrived at the scene to see everything with their own eyes. The next day, Jin approached Satsuki and invited her to join the Strikers team. He had seen her bravery in fighting the metaphysical threat to protect others. Satsuki could hardly believe it. She was really going to be part of the Strikers. Jin then turned to Moroha and told him he didn't blame him for the choice he made, and in fact, he believed it had been the right decision. Jin made sure Moroha would remain in the Strikers as well. Before walking away, Jin said he was looking forward to their upcoming training session. Satsuki was still in disbelief. She was finally able to be with Moroha. Shizuno reminded her not to get in the way of her and Moroha, but Satsuki shot back, telling Shizuno to fix her own attitude and at least show some gratitude. Later, Moroha asked Shizuno about their past connection. However, Shizuno quickly walked away, saying they would talk about it another time. Tadanori, Shizuno's older brother, asked her about her friend who turned out to be an ancient dragon. He also mentioned that both Shizuno and her friend had taken down a Dreadnought class metaphysical. He praised Shizuno, saying she was pretty amazing. Shizuno explained that she and Moroha were just friends and that there was nothing between them like Tadanori seemed to think. That day, Shizuno went to a cafe with Satsuki and Moroha. She seemed lost in thought, clearly still thinking about what her brother had said. Satsuki had to call out her name several times just to snap her out of it. Moroha asked if she was feeling okay, but Shizuno didn't even seem to hear what they were talking about. Satsuki told her they were discussing metaphysicals and asked why she thought the principal had declared that it was the three of them who had defeated the one from before. At that moment, a British man walked past a group of children who were playing nearby. He even jumped over a circle the kids had drawn on the ground. The man kept walking until he reached the cafe where Moroha and his friends were sitting and talking. Back at the table, Satsuki said that it was really Moroha who had defeated the metaphysical. But Moroha pointed out that thanks to Satsuki and Shizuno, there were no casualties, so it had been a team effort. Satsuki said what Moroha did was honestly incredible. Shizuno added that aside from Moroha, only the Six Heads could pull off something like that. The Six Heads are elite members of the White Knight organization ranked at S level, and there are only 6 of them in the entire world. The British man finally arrived at the cafe and the waitress greeted him politely. She came over and asked what he'd like to order, but he spoke in English, which she didn't understand. She quickly ran to ask the cafe owner for help. Seeing this, Satsuki stepped in to help and asked the man in English what he wanted. To her surprise, he replied in fluent Japanese. Satsuki was clearly annoyed that he could speak Japanese all along. He ordered Maxwood golden chip tea with sterilized milk and wasanban sugar. Satsuki got frustrated and told him he should go to a coffee shop instead. Moroha stepped in and tried to calm her down, saying that no small Japanese cafe would have something like that on the menu. Shizuno guessed the man was probably from England. Satsuki then realized that made sense. Of course, he was ordering something so unusual. She called out to the cafe owner, asking them to bring one of the house specials. Not long after, a drink was served in front of the British man. Satsuki explained that it was a blend of tea, milk, and tapioca. But when she told him the name of the drink was fermented soy milk tea, the British man instantly spit it out. He said it was an insult to tea. While this was going on, Moroha, who had been watching from the counter, noticed something strange. The man suddenly disappeared. Moroha guessed it wasn't that time had stopped. The guy was just incredibly fast. He had used Plana, a special movement technique, to instantly close the distance and was now right in front of Moroha, ready to throw a punch. Moroha chose not to move. A sudden gust of wind swept through the cafe, startling everyone nearby. The British man asked whether Moroha couldn't move or just didn't want to. Moroha said that if the man was actually serious about attacking him, he might have been in real danger. Without another word, the man paid for his drink and left the cafe. Satsuki asked what had just happened. Shizuno said that what they saw was white magic, Haggis, a secret technique from the high-speed combat style called Jinsoku. Moroha was surprised that Shizuno knew about it. Shizuno revealed that the British man was one of the 6 heads, and not just that, he was the leader of the British branch. It turned out the man's name was Edward. The next day, Edward visited Akane Academy. His goal was to meet with Moroha, but it wasn't just England that was interested in him. Countries like the United States, China, France, and Russia, among others, were all paying close attention to Moroha. At that time, Satsuki was in the locker room. She accidentally called these 6 heads the sex heads and laughed about it. She commented that Edward was being rude for challenging them to a fight, and she believed Moroha was definitely way stronger than Edward. Satsuki was also convinced that Moroha would reach S rank in no time and accomplish far more than what the 6 heads ever could. According to Shizuno, S rank individuals were considered a nation's last line of defense. Because of that, they had no personal freedom, even taking a walk required permission. On top of that, they were forced to fight against powerful enemies that had taken down large squads. Hearing this, Satsuki was shocked. If that was true, then she wouldn't be able to go on dates with Moroha. Shizuno commented that Satsuki's way of thinking was so simple that it made her jealous. As Moroha and the others were on their way to the training area, Maya suddenly called out to him. Satsuki immediately remembered that Maya had kissed Moroha before. Knowing this, Shizuno clearly wasn't going to just let it slide. Moroha tried to explain that what Maya did was for medical reasons only. At that moment, Maya introduced herself to Moroha. Satsuki questioned whether Maya was even a student at Akane Academy. Maya explained that she awakened as a savior earlier than most people, which meant she couldn't attend grade school. That's why she was at the academy together with Mari. It turned out that Mari was related to Shizuno, and Shizuno's older brother was actually the president of Akane Academy. That day, there was a joint class between first-year and second-year students. Taro told the first years to look up to the second years as examples. Suddenly, a second year named Kamekichi stepped forward and challenged Moroha. He accused Moroha of stealing the spotlight and even earning the nickname Super Rookie. Satsuki was surprised that someone like Kamekichi was even allowed to be a member of the Strikers. Even Kamekichi's classmates were embarrassed to be in the same year as him. As the two prepared to fight, Maya cheered Moroha on from the sidelines. But she wasn't the only one watching. Edward, Tadanori, and Angela, Edward's assistant, were also observing. However, Edward seemed more interested in his gaming console than the actual match. Kamekichi activated his plan and weapon, then began chanting for his second stage attack. Taro tried to stop him, but the spell had already been unleashed. Kamekichi was confident that his attack had scorched Moroha. But to everyone's shock, Moroha casually blocked the second stage spell using anti-magic. The students were amazed by Moroha's strength. Kamekichi was confused that Moroha didn't even flinch from the heat. Satsuki laughed and said that was Moroha's true power. Without hesitation, Moroha began chanting a third stage spell. Kamekichi was stunned and even pleaded for mercy. But Moroha went ahead and launched the third stage spell anyway. After the sparring session, Moroha headed to the principal's office to meet Mari, but only Maya was there. She invited Moroha to sit and approached him, asking if he had come to inquire about Shizuno and Tadanori. Maya offered to share what she knew and also mentioned that Mari and Edward wouldn't be returning for a while. Maya explained that the Urashibara family was influential, and Shizuno's grandfather was one of the main investors in Akane Academy. Tadanori, the head of the Japan branch, wanted Shizuno to become the head of a department so he could expand his influence. That's why he had trained her in dark magic even before she entered the academy. It was Tadanori who had recommended Shizuno for the Strikers. Moroha felt that Tadanori was simply using his younger sister as a tool, but Maya said that Shizuno had become happier after meeting Moroha, and the same went for Mari and herself. Meanwhile, Edward was having a conversation with Tadanori, Shizuno, and Mari. Edward admitted he was a bit envious of the Japan branch since the UK branch didn't have many dark magic users at headquarters. Tadanori mentioned that it was thanks to an ancient dragon that his sister had been brought back to life. He had also heard about how Moroha defied orders to help Shizuno. Mari expressed strong belief in Shizuno's talents, while Shizuno seemed uncomfortable with the conversation. During school break, Moroha was napping in the courtyard when Shizuno quietly approached him and gazed at his face. In that moment, Moroha found himself reliving another one of his past lives. In that life, he was known as Shusora, living alongside a dark sorceress. He had successfully used a forbidden spell to freeze the land around him, turning it into an icy field where no grass could grow. But according to the necromancer in that life, who was actually Shizuno in her past life, it was the right decision. Moroha then woke up from his nap, shaken by how vivid and real that memory felt. As he moved, his hand accidentally pressed against something soft. He had unintentionally touched Shizuno's cheeks. Surprised to see Shizuno on top of him, he immediately pulled back. Shizuno calmly mentioned that he had touched her, and Moroha quickly apologized. He asked if she was the necromancer from his memory, but Shizuno simply replied that she didn't understand what he was talking about. When Moroha looked at her face closely, Shizuno thought he might be trying to kiss her. He asked her not to tease him like that. Not long after, Satsuki came over and saw them together. She looked upset, thinking that Moroha was flirting with another girl right in front of her younger sister. Moroha was confused. He didn't see how his actions could be considered flirting. Still annoyed, Satsuki pointed out that she had heard Shizuno assuming Moroha was about to kiss her. Meanwhile, Edward was in a car with his assistant Angela. Angela shared that according to Principal Shimon's report, the metaphysical entity had been defeated by 3 people. Edward seemed skeptical. Angela noted that Taro might be getting frustrated with Edward's lack of agreement. Edward said he would give his answer only after seeing the real Moroha for himself. Angela, however, was worried that Edward might end up causing some kind of international diplomatic issue. She had already made a sushi dinner reservation, hoping they could relax that evening, but Edward suddenly told her to cancel it. Later that night, Moroha visited Shizuno's house. After he arrived in the dining room, Shizuno was upstairs picking out a dress to wear for the evening. When she came downstairs and saw Moroha dressed neatly, she was surprised. She figured Tadanori must have been behind it, but she complimented Moroha, saying he looked handsome and encouraged him not to feel embarrassed. Moroha responded by saying Shizuno looked beautiful. It was the first time he had seen her dressed like that. That evening, Moroha had dinner with Tadanori and Shizuno. Tadanori apologized for calling Moroha over so suddenly. He had heard that Moroha and Shizuno were close and asked if Shizuno had been helping him. Moroha said that Shizuno had always been kind to him. Tadanori told Shizuno that from that point on, she should work together with Moroha. Tadanori then asked if Moroha knew the requirement to reach Shizuno's ranking level, but Moroha didn't. Shizuno explained that the requirement was to defeat a metaphysical creature that couldn't be taken down solo. Tadanori approached Moroha and said he had already met that requirement. Moroha denied it, saying the battle had been a team effort. Tadanori then whispered to him that if two people agreed, Moroha could still be promoted to S rank. That would make him the second highest ranked person in the Japanese branch. From there, he would gain the fame and fortune he had been aiming for, and maybe even a chance to repay his uncle and aunt. Shizuno asked Tadanori not to sway Moroha's decision, warning that becoming her ranking partner would take away his freedom. But Tadanori firmly reminded her that this was a family decision. When Shizuno escorted Moroha to his room, she apologized for how her older brother had spoken so bluntly to him earlier. Moroha told her it was fine. He mentioned how the room felt quiet and a little empty. Shizuno explained that nothing in the room was chosen by her. In the Urashibara family, they were not allowed to have personal preferences or belongings. What she truly wished for was simply to sleep because in her dreams she could feel happiness. In her past life, Shizuno had been a young girl assigned to care for Shusora, who was held captive by the kingdom. She shared that her experiences with Moroha felt different, so much so that she never managed to fall asleep when she was with him. Moroha teased that it was because she was the one pretending to sleep just to mess with him. They stepped out onto the balcony for some fresh air. Shizuno, feeling cold, leaned closer to Moroha. He suggested they go back inside, but she refused, saying that she genuinely wanted to enjoy the night air. Later that night, a chauffeur from the Urashibara family was assigned to drive Moroha home. However, he asked to be dropped off along the way because he wanted to walk and get some fresh air. Before Moroha left the car, the driver handed him a package of food, which made him genuinely happy. He thanked the driver warmly. As Moroha walked down the road, he noticed someone following him. The person was wearing a helmet and without warning, activated their plana and summoned a double-edged sword. They launched an attack on Moroha, who focused on dodging rather than fighting back. Eventually, one of the sword swings tore through the package Moroha had just received, which made him upset. He then activated his own plana and summoned his weapon, Saratiga. During their clash, Moroha's sword unintentionally struck the attacker in the chest, revealing that the person was a woman. She had come to test Moroha's strength, determined to prove that he wasn't worthy. Her dual-edged sword transformed into two separate blades, and she continued her assault with sharp, precise movements. Moroha had no choice but to keep dodging. She then prepared to use a special technique. Fortunately, Moroha recalled a spell he had used in a past life. He quickly chanted the Breeze Blade incantation, and the spell was powerful enough to tear through parts of her outfit. Realizing this, the woman quickly fled into the night, leaving the fight unfinished. That same night, Shizuno couldn't sleep. Her mind was restless, filled with thoughts about what might lie ahead for her. That night, Tadanori called Edward to recommend Moroha for an S-rank designation. However, Edward said he was disappointed in Moroha because he had already tested him and didn't think he was ready to be nominated for the S-rank yet. It turned out the person who had attacked Moroha was actually Angela, and her intention was to test him. Tadanori pointed out that Moroha had defeated the Dreadnought even though there were 3 people involved. Edward suspected the other 2 must have been just as powerful. The next day, when Moroha returned to his room, he was surprised to find Maya there. She told him that starting that day, they would be roommates. Maya asked him to think of her as a soft body pillow. Moroha was clearly shocked and asked her to go back to the principal's office, but Maya said that the decision had already been approved by Mari. Moroha found it hard to believe, but that night, they ended up sharing the same bed. Moroha felt uneasy, wondering if that kind of situation was even okay. The next morning at breakfast, Tadanori told Shizuno that she had been chosen to work overseas because the headquarters in England didn't have enough dark mages. Tadanori believed they would be glad to have a student who had defeated a metaphysical. Shizuno immediately rejected the idea, but Tadanori said that the decision had already been made by her family. That morning, Shizuno walked to school looking downcast. Moroha, along with Satsuki and Maya, greeted her. Satsuki, annoyed, told Shizuno that Maya had become Moroha's roommate. Maya hoped Shizuno could accept her, and she grabbed onto Moroha's arm. Shizuno asked Moroha to explain what was going on, but he said he didn't understand anything either. During lunch break, Moroha and his friends were eating together when Satsuki commented that their lunches were not fancy enough. She showed off the sandwiches she made. Maya responded by saying that onigiri were also delicious. At that moment, Shizuno was eating curry bread and offered some to Moroha by feeding it to him, which annoyed Satsuki. Satsuki questioned why Moroha could do something like that in front of his little sister and called him unfaithful. She reminded everyone that in their past life, Moroha used to feed her every day and was always kind to her. Moroha then fed Satsuki too, and she didn't even mind if he kissed her while her eyes were closed. That afternoon, Shizuno parted ways with Moroha and the others and quietly watched them as they joked around together. While taking a bath later that evening, Shizuno admitted to herself that she was jealous of Satsuki for being able to call Moroha big brother and for being spoiled by him. Shizuno, on the other hand, was not treated the same way. She wondered why things always turned out that way for her and eventually broke down in tears. The next day at school, Satsuki told Moroha that she had already talked with the principal about becoming his roommate, arguing that she was his little sister in their past life. But the principal had rejected the request. She asked Moroha not to think of Maya as his sister. Satsuki also found it strange that Shizuno didn't show up at school and hadn't contacted any of them. Then Maya suddenly walked into the classroom. That same day, Edward visited Shizuno's home. He was surprised that she was willing to go abroad. Tadanori told him that Shizuno wouldn't turn down an offer from Edward. Not long after, the Urashibara family's butler informed Tadanori that head Shimon was on the phone and wanted to speak with Shizuno. Tadanori told her to take the call. To her surprise, the caller turned out to be Moroha, who asked her what was going on. Shizuno claimed she had the flu, but Moroha could tell she was lying. He warned her that if she didn't tell him the truth, he would come over. Shizuno finally admitted that she was going to study in England. Moroha was shocked by how sudden that decision was. He told her he would support her if it was truly what she wanted, but he also knew it wasn't. Moroha asked her to ignore what Tadanori had said. At that moment, Shizuno remembered how in her past life she had been subjected to cruelty. Because of her ties to the Urashibara family, she felt like she had no choice but to obey. Upon hearing that, Moroha punched the phone and declared that no chains could ever bind human freedom. Hearing his words, Shizuno was moved. Even without her memories, Moroha was saying the exact same thing Shusora had once said in their past life. Shizuno told Moroha not to worry about her, assuring him that she would be just fine. She quickly ended the call and tried to hold back her tears. Meanwhile, Edward mentioned that he planned to appoint Shizuno as the head of the department after she graduated. Hearing this, Tadanori felt genuinely happy. Edward admitted he believed Tadanori would feel lonely without Shizuno, but Tadanori asked him not to worry about it. Not long after, Butler informed Tadanori that Moroha had arrived at their house, but Tadanori told him to just send the boy away. Suddenly, Moroha broke into Shizuno's house and Shizuno was shocked to see him there. Moroha said he would break in again if she ever lied to him. Tadanori was stunned that Moroha would damage property and force his way in. Moroha admitted that he had lost control. Edward asked what he intended to do, and Moroha said he came to warn Edward, someone who couldn't see what was right in front of him, and to call him out. Shizuno tried to stop Moroha from saying any more, but he went ahead and confessed that he was the one who defeated the metaphysical on his own. Tadanori asked if that meant Moroha was claiming to be rank S. Shizuno reminded everyone that being rank S came at the cost of personal freedom. Moroha said he understood that, and he was ready to face the consequences. Shizuno was confused as to why Moroha would go that far for her. Moroha replied that he did it because of her, that she was the reason he could do any of it. Shizuno broke down in tears, overwhelmed with emotion. She and Moroha had already died once before, yet here they were, reunited. Compared to that, studying abroad was no big deal. Moroha said that because he had no memories of their past life together, Shizuno now meant everything to him, and he could not bear to be separated from her. He asked Shizuno to speak honestly about how she truly felt. Crying, Shizuno said that she wanted to be with Moroha in her past life, in this life, and in the life to come. Moroha asked her to come to him, and Shizuno ran into his arms. In that moment, she felt as if the chains that had bound her for so long were finally broken. She wept uncontrollably in his embrace. Tadanori suspected that Moroha was going to take Shizuno away. Moroha cheekily stuck out his tongue at Tadanori before leaping out the window, carrying Shizuno in his arms. Meanwhile, Maya and Satsuki had already arrived with a car to pick them up. They all quickly made their getaway. Shizuno felt so happy to finally break free from everything that had held her down.